Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the April 4th Coalition Show. This is the October 9th, 2023 edition of the show. It is the 474th one that we have done since the closing of the North Adams Regional Hospital, and it is the 14th show that we have done since the announcement of its possible reopening by BHS. The April 4th Coalition's mission statement is, we are for workers' rights and collective bargaining rights and are against tax breaks for the rich and corporations who ship our jobs overseas. We support all the articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but as is the custom, we put the emphasis on Article 23. And Richard, take it away.
Number 1, everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and protection against unemployment. Number 2, everyone, without any discrimination, has the right to equal pay for equal work.
Number 3, everyone who works has the right to just and favorable remuneration or compensation, whatever form it might take, ensuring for himself or herself and his or her family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. Michael.
Very good. Wow. Number 4, everyone has the right to form and join trade unions and for the protection of his or her interests. And back to you, Richard.
Oh, no. We
No?
go with October 9th, and we remind everyone that this is a Monday holiday, and the name has been changed from Columbus Day to Indigenous People Day.
Well, there's 2 holidays. One is called
Columbus
Columbus Day
Day.
still, but there's Indigenous People Day also that's celebrated.
Right, then we want to
We want to
recognize.
acknowledge both of them, but, you know, it's also my son's birthday too, but we won't mention
We
that.
won't mention that.
It's not the same day his is the 9th.
His moves
But
every day.
Columbus Day, I
yeah.
was told by my neighbor that it was always celebrated on October 12th.
Well,
But
that's
now
right.
we have a Monday holiday, so.
That's better than mine, which lands on Labor Day, in
Yeah.
the Labor Day period.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of jokes about labor in many senses of the word labor around
Yeah.
my birthday stuff, so.
I just wanted to, Michael, what do you remember about Columbus Day, learning in school? What did you learn, or Susan, that, you know, what was your first recollections of Columbus Day? It's just
Well, without him, we won't have the United States. That's what I saw.
that's what they taught you in school, that he
yeah.
discovered America or
That's
something.
right. He
Right.
did.
Daddy was the first one to
Yeah.
discover America.
That's what I was told, 18,
That's right.
And the little
1842.
jingle about the 3 boats.
Yeah,
you know,
we
Veneta, the
learned
Pinta,
all
the
that.
Santa Maria.
but we never,
When Columbus lost his shoe in 1982, and that's all I can remember of the ride.
but
Doesn't
In
it, God, I used to say
1492?
we used to say this, it just
Yeah,
came back
there
to
were
me,
these
it's a
little
long
it
time
was-
ago.
right.
It was meant to raise your, you know,
I
it
could,
was to celebrate more the man and the discovery of America than it was.
I can remember Dick Gregory, he was a comedian, and I heard him when I was in college area, and he talked about Christopher Columbus. They said, you know, he discovered America, but
And
there
he did it.
were already
There were
people
people
here.
here.
It's just he had never been there, but you know,
Right.
Europeans didn't know about it, but the people who lived there knew about
About it all along,
Hence, we
right.
have Indigenous People Day. But he said, just like if I walked over to a Cadillac and never saw it before, and I said, I'm discovering it,
Right. It's
and
basically
take
that.
possession of it.
And he wasn't even trying to come this way. He thought he was going to discover a new pathway to Asia,
Yeah,
which
and-
we aren't taught. He just,
No.
and he, by sheer chance, before he ran out of food and water and stuff, he found Cuba. He
Right.
didn't even find us, he found Cuba.
Well, last year we spent a lot of time on Christopher Columbus, showed a lot of videos, because there's a lot of people that feel that he did some pretty despicable things to the
He did in his
original
lifetime, but
native
then he
people.
wasn't alone.
Yeah,
Everyone
right,
did
and we
it.
have in our history. So, we've all, you know, we're a nation of immigrants, they say, you know.
Right.
And so, let's.
Even the
right-
ones who got here first, the
Right.
indigenous ones, they were still an immigrant because they came somehow from Asia over.
Yeah, well, I just, you know, right now, we hear that we have a huge crisis in the United States with the border, and we gotta, you know,
We got to protect and defend
but,
that
you know,
border.
according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, everyone has the right to seek
Asylum.
asylum in a country when they feel unsafe. So I thought that maybe we could study a little bit about, there was a TED Talk about refugees and try to understand what a refugee is. And then we can think about how that applies to us in our living situation now.
Around the globe, there are approximately 60 million people who have been forced to leave their homes to escape war, violence, and persecution. The majority of them have become internally displaced persons, which means they have fled their homes but are still within their own countries. Others have crossed a border and sought shelter outside of their own countries. They are commonly referred to as refugees. But what exactly does that term mean? The world has known refugees for millennia, but the modern definition was drafted in the UN's 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees in response to mass persecutions and displacements of the Second World War. It defines a refugee as someone who is outside their country of nationality and is unable to return to their home country because of well-founded fears of being persecuted. That persecution may be due to their race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion, and is often related to war and violence. Today, roughly half the world's refugees are children, some of them unaccompanied by an adult, a situation that makes them especially vulnerable to child labor or sexual exploitation. Each refugee's story is different, and many must undergo dangerous journeys with uncertain outcomes. But before we get to what their journeys involve, let's clear one thing up. There's a lot of confusion regarding the difference between the terms migrant and refugee. Migrants usually refers to people who leave their country for reasons not related to persecution, such as searching for better economic opportunities or leaving drought-stricken areas in search of better circumstances. There are many people around the world who have been displaced because of natural disasters, food insecurities, and other hardships. But international law, rightly or wrongly, only recognizes those fleeing conflict and violence as refugees. So what happens when someone flees their country? Most refugee journeys are long and perilous, with limited access to shelter, water, or food. Since the departure can be sudden and unexpected, belongings might be left behind, and people who are evading conflict often do not have the required documents like visas to board airplanes and legally enter other countries. Financial and political factors can also prevent them from traveling by standard routes. This means they can usually only travel by land or sea and may need to entrust their lives to smugglers to help them cross borders. Whereas some people seek safety with their families, others attempt passage alone and leave their loved ones behind with the hopes of being reunited later. This separation can be traumatic and unbearably long. While more than half the world's refugees are in cities, sometimes the first stop for a person fleeing conflict is a refugee camp, usually run by the United Nations Refugee Agency or local governments. Refugee camps are intended to be temporary structures, offering short-term shelter until inhabitants can safely return home, be integrated to the host country, or resettle in another country. But resettlement and long-term integration options are often limited. So many refugees are left with no choice but to remain in camps for years and sometimes even decades. Once in a new country, the first legal step for a displaced person is to apply for asylum. At this point, they're an asylum seeker and not officially recognized as a refugee until the application has been accepted. While countries by and large agree on one definition of refugee, every host country is responsible for examining all requests for asylum and deciding whether applicants can be granted the status of refugee. Different countries' guidelines can vary substantially. Host countries have several duties towards people they have recognized as refugees, like the guarantee of a minimum standard of treatment and non-discrimination. The most basic obligation towards refugees is non-refoulement, a principle preventing a nation from sending an individual to a country where their life and freedom are threatened. In reality, however, refugees are frequently the victims of inconsistent and discriminatory treatment. They are increasingly obliged to rebuild their lives in the face of xenophobia and racism. And all too often, they aren't permitted to enter the workforce and are fully dependent on humanitarian aid. In addition, far too many refugee children are out of school due to lack of funding for education programs. If you go back in your own family history, chances are you will discover that at a certain point, your ancestors were forced from their homes, either escaping a war or fleeing discrimination and persecution. It would be good of us to remember their stories when we hear of refugees currently displaced, searching for a new home.
Interesting.
That was a very,
I'm hard pressed to see the difference. I honestly think you ought to upgrade refugee to include natural disasters and,
especially with this.
and start, droughts and whatnot, because many reasons you get displaced. And we shouldn't care more about the ones we should care about all of them equally. I'm gonna put it that way. The way it's set up now, it looks like we care more about you if your life is in danger because of political violence or fear and war.
Sometimes it even depends on what war you're fleeing,
True.
whether you,
Yeah, do we recognize the little civil wars in Africa that are going on within a nation and say, or is it just the ones in Latin America or South America
or Europe,
or Europe? Because after all,
Eastern Europe.
prejudice does abound
Yeah.
in the world, unfortunately.
I liked how it was very matter of fact. It wasn't impassioned. Usually we hear people talking about refugees. It's always hateful, not looking from the perspective of the fact of what are they running from? Why are they coming here?
Here, right, it's,
No compassion.
Survival.
right.
Most of them survival. Plain and simple.
Compassion, yeah, and they want survival.
Really, if you stay where you're at, and they know you want to get out, somebody in charge may not want you to be getting out. It's really tough, I think.
Oh, it is.
It really is. It's a hard thing because you got so many
Survival
people
is definitely
affected.
what everybody wants.
It's,
And you're
you
right,
have to-
but you're right. For some reason, emotional rhetoric blinds us on many fronts. Just stop and think about it, because I had a late friend who didn't care at all that people were fleeing violence with their children to come into this country. She just, I don't want them in here. They shouldn't be. She didn't have the compassion element for people who are in worse straits
Right.
than we can ever possibly imagine here.
maybe it's about time we hire more people to take care of the problem and teach them what we're looking for, and so on. I mean, because it seems like the very people in charge really haven't got that much experience. So therefore, we block everybody coming in without knowing why.
Oh, no, the simplest answer is to say, no, go away, than it is to invite in and deal with the
Especially
problem.
like people who are paranoid,
Oh, yeah.
they use it politically as a tool to say, there's the problem, those are the problem, these are the people that are causing the problem, point the finger at them to build themselves up. It's really sad.
And it is sad, because we all forget that the majority, in fact, let's be honest, all the population came from somewhere else.
Right.
And whether we were an immigrant or a refugee, we still came from the same place.
Right. And what were you going to say, Mike?
It's really hard, it's a rough subject, you know what I mean? Because the people on the bottom here already feel, well, I can't get a job. These people are going to come over here and take the job I can't get.
Right, but that's not the situation now. We don't have enough workers. Like they're saying, there's not enough nurses, there's not enough,
There's not enough of anything.
That brings up a point. When I was in my early 20s, that's first when they were getting doctors from different countries. And there was one doctor that I knew who came from the Soviet Union. And he, at one point, was going to tell me how he got out. I never did find out, but that's the first time that people from different countries, all these doctors and interns started to come in my early 20s. And they weren't exactly refugees, but then there was one who was fleeing, this country that, so
Right.
it's all different backgrounds.
Yeah, I studied immigration, and one of the things during this one college class on immigration, the professor said is they call it the push and the pull theory of immigration. Some people are pushed to migrate. Other people are pulled by the look. I remember in that movie El Norte, they talk Latin America. This woman was talking to the other people. She goes, "I know all about America. I read the Ladies' Home Journal, and it says even poor people in America have toilets that flush." Even poor people have that. I mean, this is the difference that we're talking about, the standard of living. So there's a pull sometimes,
Yeah, to reach for the better. to reach
Yeah.
for the
And the fact in that video, they talked about the restriction on people working. Why not allow people to work,
Right.
while they're waiting for their status to be declared? Let them work, so then they're not living in a
Right, it accomplishes a great deal, not only for us in terms of getting jobs filled and getting, it helps in the economic end for us, and they become more integrated. They learn quicker to become part of society. It helps them to be working, and it increases their self-worth.
That we need more children, because in the United States, mothers aren't having children anymore.
That's a good segue.
You know?
Why don't we look at this next
you've got
video?
something?
We got a video on population, U.S. population. Let's watch that
It is a good
video.
segue.
It was a good segue. So if we can watch that video.
The population declining, it could be because of our current circumstances with a pandemic. Times are seeming to be a lot more difficult.
Deanna Volek is in her late 30s. She's lived through a pandemic, finished law school during a recession, and as she looks to the future, she doesn't see children as a part of it.
I love children. I love the children in my life. It wasn't something I wanted to do myself.
Decisions like hers, one of many experts say, contributing to the U.S.'s stalled population growth, increasing by just 0.1% in the past year, a record low.
This is the smallest percentage decline in American history.
What are the key reasons we're seeing this decline in population rate?
Number one, COVID, which is affecting the death rate, but also fewer women are having children right now as well. COVID has also slowed down immigration into the United States. That was the other source of population growth to the country.
The U.S. death rate reached new heights, growing 17% in 2020, with the coronavirus added to the top leading causes of death. The average life expectancy diminishing for men, women, and groups across the board, with Black and Hispanic Americans facing the most dramatic increases. Doctors citing the effects of COVID as a primary cause.
Changes in access to routine medical care has worsened many of the outcomes related to chronic conditions, has delayed cancer screening, access to medications has gotten harder for many diseases as well.
Experts add it's not just wellness. Less people are choosing to have kids.
We do know that births have declined across all racial and ethnic groups.
25 states registered what Kenneth Johnson, a demographer, calls a natural decrease in population growth in 2020, which measures the number of births relative to the number of deaths. That change up from 8 states the year prior.
Are there factors about the world as it stands, specifically in the pandemic setting, that make you go, I don't think I want to do this?
With climate change and sustainability, how the world is going to be in the next decades, I think is a cause for concern for a lot of people.
Experts worry a shrinking population could have big consequences.
If, on the other hand, the birth rates don't rise again, that has implications that ripple through the whole economy and society.
As for individuals like Deanna, she says her personal choice not to have children has been met with support, and she hopes more support can be given for those pursuing parenthood in the pandemic world.
We don't have paid parental leave on a national level. Childcare is very expensive. I advocate strongly still for policies that support families, because we want to support the people that do decide to have children and make sure that if people make that decision, they're doing it in a supportive environment.
And it's worth noting, we still don't know what the full impacts of this population change will be, but experts point out that the effects will likely trickle down and impact the labor force in our economy and change the way we think about the healthcare industry and education moving forward. Hallie?
Yeah, you were right, Susan. The birth rate is going down and our population's going down.
in the
What I
US.
was thinking about kind of being selfish is Social Security.
Yeah,
Well, that too.
They've got to
Fewer
pay
people.
into it in order to,
Yeah.
the elderly, you know.
Yes, that's true. Fewer people are going to be paying.
Paying.
And again, that-
but we have a
Everybody's gonna
video
get
that we can
probably-
show maybe later, but Robert Reich said that they made that reforms in the 80s. They already knew about the baby boomer getting older. They already made those
adjustments,
calculations, but I think there's another video
There is.
about US population growth that we should probably watch. It's a real short one, just to see what they're saying about population growth.
U.S. population growth driven entirely by immigration by 2043. In a new demographics report, the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, projects that population growth in the U.S. will be driven entirely by immigration by 2043. Total population growth in the United States has been steadily decreasing for decades, with recent years seeing the most sluggish rate since the Great Depression. According to the report published in July, deaths will exceed births in the U.S. by 2043, and immigration rates will then account for about 3/4 of the overall increase in size of the population, and the net effects of fertility and mortality account for the remaining quarter. In addition to its predictions on the country's future demographic shifts, the report also claims that legal and illegal immigration rates are likely to increase in the coming years. Based on the report, immigration will play a key role in increasing the country's overall population. We've also seen that immigration workers continue to play a key role in maintaining a healthy labor market, helping to stimulate much-needed economic growth and slow high inflation rates. Despite the practical need for increased immigration rates, over the last several years, the U.S. immigration system has been declimated by Trump-era restrictive policies, COVID-related delays, and an ever-increasing visa backlog. With recent labor shortages and the drastic decline of U.S.-born population discussed in CBO's report, the need for immigration is at an all-time high.
Well, I suspect that's one reason we don't have enough work, enough workers to fill the jobs that are available.
Right, and that's what's
Because the
causing the problem with the Visiting Nurses Association. You know, there's not enough nurses. We need more workers. You know, that's what and so what the hospital's doing is increasing the amount of work that the individuals have to do, and they're looking, saying, this is too hard. I can get a better job and get paid more somewhere else.
Right.
So, you know, let's not look at refugees and immigrants and people seeking to come to the
Asylum.
United States as enemies. We need to bring more people in. It's not a big, huge problem. What the problem is, we don't have the correct structure within our government to bring the people in, process them, and get them into the workplace.
And we don't have the political will as long as you have two parties going in. One party basically totally opposed and the other one willing to try to work to improve it, but they want to do piecemeal approach.
Right.
Nobody wants to look at the whole structure and solve the problem in the political end of it. Because that's a heavy lift to be asked to reform something,
Yeah.
you know.
What were you
Because
gonna
they're
say,
going to be
Susan?
damned if they do and damned if they don't in the situation. Well, they are.
What I was thinking about was probably, I don't know if it's even related here, is that when the writers were on strike, it's all about the AI, you know,
Artificial intelligence.
artificial intelligence, and people are losing jobs over that. And I think that might be a crisis in the future.
Oh, it's coming.
And
yes.
it's already hit the.
It's already hit the auto industry.
Heart of the artist industry.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a terrible piece of artwork and put a filter over it, and it looks like something magnificent.
Right.
So, I'm just saying it's taking away some of the jobs already.
Mm-hmm. Well, the roots of that started when they started doing the robots to do the heavy lifting and work in the warehouses and in the auto industry.
saw that.
And they developed, and it's just been evolving ever since, and nobody was paying attention to it.
Right. It's been
And I know
something,
we got a field.
yeah.
I knew
it's
it was
something.
out of field, I knew it was.
But we still
but I-
need the population. I think we need a critical mass to there's certain jobs that you need
Definitely.
human beings to do.
Right.
And we need to bring people in, and we need to not, I think the word you used was compassion.
Right.
We have to have compassion and not
bringing
hate.
them.
And now,
And that's impressive to apply. And we all have to understand that population growth is declining for several reasons, including the feeling that it's too expensive to have children.
right,
Or it's not safe, that this is not the world you want to bring your children into. Because my mother once said to me, Liz, I'm sorry you can't have children, but I'm kind of glad, because this is not the world you would want to bring children into.
right.
And it's always stuck with me.
Well,
It's
I
a-
And a lot of women are making that choice. I didn't have the choice, I couldn't, but
Right.
I'm still not sure I would have to
You
this day, because we had that long conversation about it. And we're talking 20 years back. The world certainly hasn't improved.
No, my wife, feels bad about the situation, but I try to, remain hopeful that, that things, and that, like Michael Moore always says, not hope as like a dope to, he calls them hopamine or something like that, that you're hoping just as a drug, but hope that, we really can move forward and really address these issues that seem to be overwhelming, but maybe if we just work together on them.
They're not so heavy.
They won't be, that difficult. Maybe do some listening to the younger generation and what they're saying, and do welcome those that are coming from the outside, because they could be the people that create the solution.
Exactly.
We always tend to look at people how they are and say they're always going to be that way. But as we know, everything changes, and that these poor people coming over the border that you see as dependents could be the people that lead our country to a better way of life. I don't know.
No, I agree. I haven't given up hope. I
Yeah.
never would. Humanity's capacity is infinite, and growth is one of those things. It can happen. It just,
Right. But we need that compassion, I think, for each
Right.
other, not the hatred, not the,
correct.
That's
You
what
don't
the
need
visiting
divisiveness.
nurses-
You need unity
they
at
have
this time.
compassion.
yeah.
We need unity to
We
solve
may have come
problems.
on different ships, but we're in the same boat now.
Yes.
Oh,
I
we've
was
always,
here before all years, because I have Indian blood on both sides of my family, I mean, a Native American. So I was here first.
That's right.
I'm
thank
just
you for
making a
letting
joke.
us in, Susan.
I'm just making a
Th-
joke.
Thank you for letting the rest of us come in, Susan.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I was,
All right, folks, we've only got 5 seconds left, so we're gonna
Power
say,
to the people.
yeah.
Power to the people.
All right. Gotta remember to say that.
I just have to.
There's power in the factory, power in the land, power in the hand of the worker. But it all amounts to nothing if together we don't stand. There is power in our union. Now the lessons of the past were all learned with workers' blood. Mistakes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities and the farmlands to trenches full of mud. War's always been the bosses'